happened in court in there?
So today we informed the court that Nicki Minaj has satisfied the judgment. And so therefore there was no need to proceed further with our motion for an order authorizing the sale of her house in order to satisfy that judgment.
What does your client think of this? How's he responding?
He is incredibly gratified and happy. It's been a long time coming to have justice finally done here.
Okay, listen, Nicki Minaj almost walked straight into a $20 million nightmare, and it all came down to a lawsuit that quietly snowballed out of control. This situation had nothing to do with music or business moves. It was about ignoring court papers and letting a legal issue sit way too long. Here's how it started. Back in 2019, Nicki was performing at a concert in Frankfurt, Germany. A security guard named Thomas Willer Mueller was working the event. According to his claims, Nicki allegedly got into a heated argument with a female security guard backstage. When Thomas stepped in to break things up, that's when the situation allegedly turned physical. Thomas says Nicki's husband, Kenneth Petty, punched him in the face. Not a push or a warning, but a punch that reportedly shattered his jaw. The injury was serious enough that he had to undergo multiple surgeries. To this day, he allegedly has 5 metal plates in his jaw, something that permanently changed his life. In 2022, Thomas decided to take the legal route and sued both Nicki and Kenneth. He wasn't asking for an outrageous amount at first. Around $21,000 was meant to cover medical bills, and roughly $700,000 was requested for long-term injury and emotional suffering. Altogether, the lawsuit came out to about $721,000. But here's where things really went left. Nicki and Kenneth reportedly never responded to the lawsuit at all. No legal response, no court appearance, nothing. And when you don't show up to defend yourself, the court doesn't wait around. In March of 2024, the judge issued a default judgment, handing Thomas the win and awarding him over $500,000. Even after that ruling, the money still didn't come through. Months passed with no payment. That's when Thomas's lawyer decided to apply real pressure. Nicki owns a Hidden Hills mansion valued at around $20 million, and the legal team moved to have that property targeted to cover the judgment. The request went back in front of the judge, who agreed with the move. The only thing standing in the way was one final document from Bank of America confirming Nicki's mortgage payments. Once that paperwork was ready, the forced sale was close to becoming official. So at today's hearing, Nicki finally realized this situation was very real, and nobody was bluffing. Just hours before the judge was prepared to sign off on selling her house, the money suddenly showed up, she paid the judgment, and the security guard's lawyer, Roland Stone, made it clear this wasn't easy money to collect.
What happened in court in there?
So today we informed the court that Nicki Minaj has satisfied the judgment. And so therefore there was no need to proceed further with our motion for an order authorizing the sale of her house in order to satisfy that judgment.
What does your client think of this? How's he responding?
He is incredibly gratified and happy. It's been a long time coming to have justice finally done here. But he's very happy for himself. He suffered a very heinous attack years ago. And not only did it take years to achieve the judgment, but it then took nearly 2 years in order to enforce that judgment. And we never thought it would have to go quite this far in order to actually go and put a levy on a millionaire's house, and go to the last 24 hours before she decides to satisfy the judgment.
Have you talked to Nicki Minaj? Do you think she feels remorseful about what happened?
I can't speak for her. I have not spoken to her directly, and I've only spoken to her counsel.
According to the lawyer, they had to push this case all the way to the edge just to get paid. In other words, they had to threaten to take everything before Nicki finally cut that check. It didn't come from goodwill or a change of heart. It came after the pressure hit maximum level. And let's be honest, Nicki was extremely stubborn through this whole process. She didn't move an inch until the consequences were right in her face. The legal team had to tighten the grip before she finally budged. That's exactly how the lawyer framed it once the payment cleared and the case wrapped up. At the end of the day, Nicki gets to keep her $20 million mansion, and the security guard finally gets the money he's been waiting on for years. Everybody walked away with what the court ordered, but it took way longer than it should have. Real talk, though, it never had to reach this point. It's easy to understand why Nicki may have felt her husband was protecting her or why she believed the security guard was wrong. But ignoring lawsuits, court orders, and legal deadlines doesn't make problems disappear. It only makes them louder, more expensive, and harder to escape. This is just how the legal system works, plain and simple. If you ignore a lawsuit, you lose by default. And if you ignore the judgment after that, the court doesn't let it slide. They move in and start going after your assets and property. And honestly, that man probably deserved more than $500,000 for what he went through. Having to live the rest of your life with 5 metal plates in your jaw is not a small thing. That's permanent damage that affects you every single day. But at the end of the day, this outcome came down to a default judgment. The judge made that decision because Nicki never responded, which meant the court ruled without hearing her side at all.
So it looks like Nicki Minaj won't be losing her house after all. She gave in and paid those fines. $500,000 was awarded to an old security guard who claims that Mr. Kenneth Petty assaulted him backstage at one of her shows. Nicki claims she didn't know about this lawsuit, but I'm sure with the judge putting pressure on her and letting her know that she will lose her home, definitely made things a little bit easier with her decision to paying up that security guard. You know what's crazy is that Mr. Petty is the one doing the assaulting, but Nicki is the one doing the paying. I don't like that, but hey, if she likes it, I love it, whatever.
Here's the thing that a lot of people don't seem to understand, and this case is a perfect example of it. The legal system does not run on vibes, feelings, or celebrity status. It runs on paperwork, deadlines, and responses. Once a lawsuit is filed, the clock starts ticking whether you acknowledge it or not. Ignoring it doesn't freeze the process, it speeds it up in the worst way possible. The court doesn't keep chasing you forever, they simply move forward without you. That's how you end up losing by default, not because the judge hates you, but because you chose not to participate. And once that default judgment is entered, your options shrink fast, your leverage disappears, and the court now has the power to enforce that judgment however the law allows. What makes this situation hit harder is the level of injury involved. This wasn't a minor scuffle or a situation where someone walked away with a bruise and a story. This man's jaw was reportedly broken to the point where he needed multiple surgeries and now has 5 metal plates permanently in his face. That's not something that heals and gets forgotten. That affects how you eat, how you talk, how you sleep, and how you live for the rest of your life. Pain like that doesn't clock out after a year. It follows you forever. When you look at it through that lens, $500,000 doesn't even sound that wild. If anything, a lot of people would argue that number was conservative considering the long-term physical and emotional impact. The wild part is that this whole situation could have been handled very differently if Nicki had responded early. Even if she believed the security guard was wrong, even if she felt her husband was justified, even if she thought the case was exaggerated, the smart move would have been to show up legally and fight it there. Courts exist for disputes like this. You don't win by silence, you win by strategy. By not responding at all, she essentially handed the court full control of the narrative and the outcome. Once the judgment was entered, the court didn't need permission anymore. That's when assets come into play, properties get flagged, and lawyers start circling anything valuable with your name on it. At the end of the day, this case is less about celebrity drama and more about a cautionary tale. Money and fame don't cancel consequences, they just raise the stakes. Ignoring legal problems doesn't make them disappear, it makes them more expensive and more public. The security guard waited years to be compensated for something that permanently altered his life, and he only got paid when the pressure became unavoidable. That says a lot about how far things can go when people assume problems will just fade away. The system doesn't forget, deadlines don't pause, and judgments don't care how famous you are. Once the court speaks, the only question left is how much it's gonna cost you to finally listen.
So guys, it's been confirmed. Nicki Minaj will in fact not have to sell her $20 million home to pay that bodyguard his $500,000 judgment. Today, the lawyers took to the courthouse to let it be known that Nicki Minaj in fact did pay the $500,000 and she satisfied the judgment. But anybody with critical thinking skills knew that this woman was not going to have to sell her house. Y'all thought a multi-millionaire was going to have to sell a $20 million house over a $500,000 lawsuit. Think about how crazy that sounds. People really have to start using critical thinking before they hate, because y'all got on here and said that this woman was gonna go homeless and she was going broke and she was gonna have to sell her house. A lot of y'all don't be thinking. So this should honestly clear up the whole Nicki Minaj going broke rumors, because she just paid $500K. And most of us do not have no $500K to come out our pockets and pay somebody. So let's be for real. Everybody really got online and said, oh, Nicki Minaj is about to be homeless. The same woman who grossed over $108 million on her tour? Y'all let me know what y'all thinking in the comments. That's a wrap on that.
When you zoom out and really look at this whole situation, it's a reminder that legal problems don't care about timing, image, or excuses. They move at their own pace, and once they start, they don't stop unless someone actively steps in. What makes this case stand out is not just who's involved, but how long it dragged on because of silence. Years passed before anything was resolved, and during that time, the issue only grew heavier, more expensive, and more complicated. That waiting game didn't protect anyone, it just stacked pressure until something had to give. A lot of people assume that money or status gives you room to ignore things. In reality, it does the opposite. The more you have, the more there is for the court to reach for if it comes down to enforcement. Houses, bank accounts, assets, all of it becomes fair game once a judgment is entered and ignored. That's exactly why things escalated to the point where a multi-million-dollar mansion was on the chopping block. The court wasn't being dramatic, it was following procedure. Pay what's owed or the value will be pulled from somewhere else. It's also worth noting that default judgments rarely favor the person who stays silent. When you don't show up, you don't get to explain, negotiate, or challenge details. You don't get to push back on numbers or timelines. The judge makes decisions based on what's in front of them, and that's usually the other side's version of events. That's not bias, that's how the system fills the gap when one party refuses to participate. Silence doesn't read as strength in court, it reads as consent.
Nicki Minaj don't know if she want to be a rapper or a politician, but either way, she finna lose that house. But let's talk about it. Okay, so Nicki Minaj is ordered to pay $503,000 for a lawsuit that happened back in some time. She's basically been ordered to pay the $503,000 or risk her $20 million California mansion. Now she bought the California mansion at $13 million, and now the judge is saying if you can't pay the $503,000, then I can help you. Now, with that being said, the judge is ordering her to pay that by Thursday, January 22nd, and if she does not, then her house will go on the market. She bought the house, like I said, for $13 million, and it will sell for $20. Basically, Nicki Minaj was worrying about the wrong things. You worried about Don Lemon, what he got going on. You worried about what Cardi B got going on. You're worried about what everybody going on, but you ain't worried about losing your dang on home. And all you gotta do is pay that $503,000. Where's her people? Where's her team? Where's her? I mean, damn. Who she gonna be? What she wanna be? Y'all leave it in the comments down below. Nicki Minaj might be homeless.
From the security guard's perspective, this wasn't about clout or headlines. This was about living with a permanent injury and fighting just to be acknowledged. 5 metal plates in your jaw is not a temporary setback. It's a lifelong reminder of one moment that changed everything. Medical costs, pain management, emotional stress, all of that adds up over time. Waiting years to be compensated only adds insult to injury. The fact that payment only came when assets were threatened says a lot about how hard he had to push just to be taken seriously. For Nicki, this situation likely felt personal and emotional from the start. When someone believes their partner was acting in protection, it's easy to dig your heels in. Pride gets involved, loyalty kicks in. But the courtroom doesn't operate on feelings or personal belief. It operates on response deadlines and legal responsibility. What might feel like standing your ground can quickly turn into losing control of the outcome. That's the danger of mixing emotion with legal strategy. This case also highlights how avoidable some disasters really are. Early response could have meant negotiations, settlements, or at least a controlled outcome. Lawyers exist for a reason. Even if you think you're right, you still show up. You still protect your interests. Choosing not to engage is one of the few ways to guarantee the worst-case scenario. Once enforcement starts, it's no longer about who was right or wrong. It's about compliance. And at the end of the day, nobody walked away untouched here. One person lives with permanent damage. Another nearly lost a home worth tens of millions. All of it stemmed from one incident and years of inaction afterward. This wasn't about music, fans, or public opinion. It was about accountability catching up, slowly but firmly. The court didn't rush. It waited. And when nothing changed, it acted. If there's a lesson in all this, it's that ignoring legal problems is one of the most expensive mistakes anyone can make. Problems don't shrink when you avoid them. They grow teeth. They gain leverage, and eventually they show up at your door with paperwork that doesn't ask twice. Fame might delay the moment, but it doesn't cancel it. So before you dip, make sure you smash that like button if you're riding with us, tap subscribe if you're a real one, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single messy update. Trust me, you're gonna wanna be here for the next video.